good. And so the definition I want to focus on real quick is in chapter 13, verse 22. The thorny soil, which is background, by the way. But in verse 22 of Matthew chapter 23, notice what Jesus says here. He says, "As for what was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful." I want to focus for just a second on that phrase in 22, the cares of this world. The word cares there carries a very interesting idea, and the Greek word there means to be consumed with something. And to apply it in this parable, what Jesus is saying is that there is a type of listener to the gospel of Jesus Christ. They hear the gospel, and assuming they obey it, they're baptized into Christ for the forgiveness of sins. But then the things that are out there in the world, those things so consume them that as the word, the seed is beginning to sprout and showing just a little bit of life, those thorns overgrow the plant and they choke it out and the plant dies. The cares of this world can choke out our spiritual lives. And so it is with success. Success is a care of this world. It's something that if we give all our time and all our attention and all our resources to, it can consume us to the point that it becomes our identity. And Jesus said, you've got to be careful because the cares of this world have the potential to absolutely grab your spiritual life by the throat and keep tightening its grip until there is no spiritual life left in you at all. Success and cares of this world have the potential, if you let it, to just absolutely suffocate your spiritual life. And if we're so consumed with success that it's all we think about, and we're no longer in the Word, we're no longer in the assembly, we're no longer in personal times of prayer, it might just be that you have bowed the knee to the false god of achievement and success. Let's look at a second illustration of this about being consumed with something. Let's go to the book of Luke. Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10, beginning in verse 38, it's a very familiar story to most of us. Mary and Martha, the two sisters who lived in Bethany, they welcomed Jesus into their home. Verse 38 says that they welcomed Jesus into their home. And you've got two sisters in this story who make two different choices. One of them, it says in verse 40, she was distracted with much serving. Now, I want to take a minute and just say this. I don't know if Jesus Christ were sitting on my couch. I can tell you one thing, I would not be worried about the dishes. I wouldn't be worried about anything else going on. I would be at His feet like Mary listening to Him. If you got to think about this, Martha is so consumed with what's going on around her, making sure that everything is just absolutely perfect, that she forgets that the Creator of the universe is sitting on her couch. She forgets that the Son of God, who is about to die for her sins, is sitting on her couch in her living room. Do you know how many people in the first century would have absolutely probably gone out and killed somebody and taken all their money and gone to jail to have that privilege? How many people do you think wanted Jesus, the Son of God, to come into their house and to eat dinner with them, or to sit on their couch and to have a conversation with them? There's no telling. And here's Martha. She's got Jesus sitting on her couch and she's not even paying attention to Him. She's just so focused on apparently stuff in the kitchen, what's in front of her, that she misses Jesus. But we know that her sister doesn't, because the text tells us that Mary was at His feet listening to Him. But then Martha complains to Jesus in verse 40. And she's just thinking to herself, you know what? Jesus is really going to see my side on this. Jesus is really going to sympathize with me on this. And so she complains and says, Lord, I'm doing this all by myself. You need to tell her to come help me. But much to her surprise, Jesus did not see this situation the way that she did. And the principle is this. Mary understood something that Martha didn't understand. And that was this. There's a time when you prepare for your company, and then there's a time when you enjoy the company that you've prepared for. Now, if Jesus were coming to my house, I can promise you this, the house would be spotless and it would smell good and the grass would be cut, okay? So I would do all that stuff if Jesus were coming too, but the minute that Jesus walked in my door, I'm all His, right? Because He's my guest. He's my company. And there's a time to prepare and there's a time to enjoy. But Martha was so distracted and she was so consumed. That's the concept that Jesus is trying to get us to understand. She was so consumed with what was going on around her that she missed the moment. And we can do the same thing with success. Success can come in and choke out our spiritual life if we let it do so. And so if we're allowing success to fester in our minds to the point that we're no longer developing a relationship with God, the Bible indicates that you're bowing to the knee to the idol of success. Here's the second thing. We might be bowing the knee to the idol of success if, excuse me one second. We might be bowing the knee to the idol of success if we have a lack of contentment. A lack of contentment. There's a verse over in the book of Acts. It's only one sentence. And it talks about the Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 20. And this is it's so short and it's so very profound though. It's one of those verses if you're reading on a daily Bible reading and you're trying to make it through it, or if you're reading in the car, you'll just read right over it. It's Acts 20, verse 33. And Paul is talking to the Ephesian elders, and he looks at those people in the eye, and he says, I have coveted no one's gold, silver, or apparel. That is such a short statement, but it is so profound. How many of you can say that about yourself? That I have coveted nobody's car, house, bank account, whatever. I can't. I'll give you an example. We were driving to get supper last night, and Madison drives a silver 2018 Pathfinder. And we're driving that thing down Florence Boulevard, and we pass Newbern's. And I look over at Newbern's, and the car that's in the parking spot closest to the road is also a Pathfinder, just like hers. But it's the new, sleek, red Pathfinder. And I was thinking to myself, boy, that's a pretty car. And I'm sitting in a Pathfinder driving one down the road, right? See, we do that. We think, boy, that's a pretty car. I sure would like to have it, but we're sitting in one ourselves. The Apostle Paul wasn't like that. He says, I have coveted no one's silver or gold or anything that anybody has. Because the Apostle Paul was content. And he tells us over in Philippians chapter 4, as he's sitting in jail, he tells us in verse 12 that I have learned. It's not like I've inherited. He doesn't say that I just naturally have this spirit. He says, I have learned to be content. And he goes on to say in that chapter, I've been in every state a man can be in. I've had nothing. There's been times when I've had nothing. There's been times when I've had everything. I've been on the low end of the spectrum, I've been on the high end of the spectrum, and I've been everywhere in between. And I can tell you from personal experience, if you want to be a content person, you have to learn it. You've got to practice it. You've got to mature that to the point where you look at your stuff and your cars and your houses and your bank accounts and the clothes that you put on every day and reach that point where you say, you know what, I'm good. I'm fine with what I've got. I mean, I'm satisfied with where I am in life. You know, I'm not just real fascinated with all the new stuff, the bells and whistles coming out and all that. I'm good with what I have. That takes learning and it takes practice. But the Bible indicates that we've bowed the knee to success if we lack contentment. So here's another question as we conclude real quick. How do we get up from the idol of success? If we're bowing the knee to that, how do we quit serving it? How do we get up from that idol and serve Jesus Christ? How do we do it? Two things. Number one, keep life in perspective. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 25, He says, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, and your body, what you will put on. And then He asks a really powerful question. He says, is not life more than food, clothing, shelter? And what's the answer to that question? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, life is a whole lot bigger than that. Listen, if we're just worried about food, clothing, and shelter, and we're not worried about anything else, we've missed it. Because the Bible indicates, and it's very, very clear, that there's going to come a day when we're going to die, and our food and clothing and our shelter will not go with us. And what's going to happen to us then? We can't take anything with us, right? Because we didn't bring anything into the world. So then what? Well, Jesus then says in Matthew 16:26, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own what? He loses his own soul. What does it profit? What have you really gained? And so if we're going to get up from the idol of success and personal achievement, we've got to keep life in perspective and realize there is something much more important that I'm supposed to pursue, something much more important that I'm supposed to put my energy towards than just food, clothing, and shelter. Because it doesn't matter if I have all the food in the world, if I have all the shelter in the world, if I have all the clothes in the world, if I even own the world. Matthew 16, if I have everything, if I own every dime in this world, but I lose my own soul, what have I gained? Keep life in perspective. This morning you may be here and you might be thinking to yourself, you know what? I have really bowed the knee to success. It might be that one of those two things that we talked about is true of you. It might be that success has so consumed you that you no longer cultivate a relationship with God. And you want to change that. We're going to give you an opportunity to do that. It might be this morning that you are really struggling in lacking commitment, lacking contentment, and saying, look, I'm good with what I got. I'm fine. We can help you with that this morning. I'd be more than happy to. If you're here this morning, though, and you're not a New Testament Christian, you haven't even bowed the knee to King Jesus yet. You haven't done what He's asked you to do to put Him on in baptism and become a Christian. That's where it starts. And if you're here this morning and you're ready to do that, you know what you need to do to become a Christian, and you want to make that step, we would be absolutely thrilled to help with you and share you in that moment. Maybe here, though, this morning, and you need the prayers of Christians. And if you do, we are more than happy to take your name to God's throne. And we would be more than happy to encourage you in any way that we can. And so if you'd like to serve King Jesus, do what you have to do right now as together we stand and sing.
I will sing and keep and sing, but from the peaceful soul, every name within, seeking to rise no more. But the Master of the sea sing. Love so mighty and so true merits my soul's best songs. Faithful, loving service due to Him belongs. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Souls in danger, look above. Jesus completely saves. He will lift you by His love out of the angry waves. He's the master of the sea, billows His will obey. He who Savior wants to be saved today. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me.
Thank you for being with us this morning. We really appreciate everybody being here. Hope to see you at 12:30 here in just a minute. We're going to open up to Daniel chapter 2. We'll continue talking about the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw and the interpretation of that. Hope you have a great lunch, and we'll see you at 12:30.
Closing song this morning will be number 417, Where He Leads I'll Follow. After the song, Jim Pratt will dismiss us in prayer. Sweet are the promises, kind is the word, dearer far than any message man ever heard.
Good was the mind of Christ, and lives I see. He's a great example, is a pattern for me. When He leads I follow, follow the way. When He leads I follow Jesus every day. Listen to His loving words, come unto me. With heavy laden, there is sweet rest for thee. Trust in His promises, faithful and sure. Lean upon the Savior, and thy soul is secure. When He leads I follow, follow the way. When He leads I follow Jesus every day.
Speech on. Calculate timer. Selected. Music recognition. Selected. Screen.